So a lot of people have already talked about fighting games being too hard or being as easy as other competitive genres. So I kind of want to approach this topic from an angle I haven't heard too many people elaborate on. And I'm going to start by bringing up something I saw James Chen say on Twitter. He said, fighting games don't play to any natural human tendency. And I want to elaborate on why I agree with this a lot, actually. So let's start with blocking, because in a lot of traditional 2D fighting games, you block by holding back, or even with something like Tekken, you have the option to press nothing in order to block. This is an example of an accepted mechanic in fighting games that I don't think plays to natural human tendencies, because the same input that's being used for movement is being used to block. Even within the video game space, this is not the norm outside of this genre. Fighting games are pretty much multiplayer action games, but even with most action games where you can block, there is a dedicated individual button for blocking. And of course, there's games like Virtua Fighter or Smash that have separate individual buttons to block, but this is just one example of many. There's also option selects, and if you don't already know, option selects are basically when you do an input that allows you to beat multiple actions from your opponent. Let me give an example. In King of Fighters 15, when you knock down an opponent, they can either roll, do a wake up dragon punch, or do a wake up throw. If I just do a regular aerial move on their knockdown, they can counter it if they roll or dragon punch. And if I try to do a close-up normal, they can throw me. But there is a way I can beat all three possibilities with just one action. If I press and hold back, then do my jump attack right before hitting the ground, and then quickly do a throw input, I will block if they do a dragon punch, throw them if they roll, and break their throw if they try to throw on wake up. This means there are three possibilities that I don't have to predict. The only way to get out of this is to just jump out of the corner. Now, there's two reasons I'm bringing this up. One, if a beginner or even some intermediate players are going against someone who does this option select, the natural human understanding of what's happening is that I'm predicting all three of their choices. Generally speaking, most people who are new to fighting games won't understand that I'm just doing one thing that answers all three of those choices. It's not intuitive, and most people associate one input with one action. That's the natural thing to do. The second reason I'm bringing this up is that doing an option select isn't natural for the same reason. Most regular people associate a single input with a single action. So if I attack, I'm not thinking about also blocking. I'm just thinking about attacking. You have to completely rewire your human instinct to engage with option selects in the first place. But alright, let's talk about another aspect of fighting games that I feel is particularly unintuitive for a lot of normal people, and it's related to the idea of visual logic in video games. And to explain what I mean here, let's go back to blocking for a second. In a lot of fighting games, there are high moves and you got low moves. To block high, you have to block while standing, and to block low, you usually have to block while crouching. Generally though, the way you identify a high move is if it looks like the move is hitting above your character. And for low moves, they're generally crouching moves or lower hitting moves, obviously. Now that sounds simple enough, but sometimes this isn't actually the case. It is not always easy to tell if a move hits high or not. For example, in Melty Blood, Ciel has a move called Halo where she dives on her opponent. The move has one version where it hits high and the other version of the move doesn't. You can block it either high or low, but both versions are animated the same. If someone blocks this move while crouching and it works, and then they see the same animation and they get bodied because they had to block high, that is confusing. They now have to remember that even though they may have successfully blocked low for one version, that there's a version where you have to block high. And that leads me into my next point about fighting games not feeling natural. There's oftentimes a lack of visual harmony. I want to give another example here of what I mean when I say a lot of fighting games lack visual harmony. So in King of Fighters 15, there's a mechanic called Shatter Strike. And when you use Shatter Strike, your opponent goes into a crumple state. When your opponent enters this crumple state, you can follow up with a combo afterwards. But what I learned recently is that if you start your combo with a Shatter Strike, the game treats the crumpled character as if they're in the air, meaning you can only do combos that work on airborne characters. Otherwise, the combo can't continue. On the other hand, if you Shatter Strike in the middle of a combo, you can follow up with your normal, air quotes, combo follow-ups. The part that is unintuitive about this is that whether you Shatter Strike them at the beginning of a combo or Shatter Strike them at the middle of the combo, the crumple state looks the exact same even though they have different rules. If I'm visually seeing that the character is on the ground, I'm not thinking naturally that I can only do combos that apply as if they're in the air. Again, lack of visual harmony. Eventually, you do start to pick up on a lot of these abstract nuances when it comes to the genre. And I want to make this clear. I'm not even saying all of these things are hard to do. I'm just saying that holding back to block isn't necessarily natural, even though it's technically easy, if that makes sense, compared to other competitive genres. Especially for other genres, those abstractions happen more at a higher level of competition and not for basic fundamental things like blocking in fighting games. In first-person shooters, when we talk about headshots, for example, when you shoot the person's head, there's a visual indicator saying, I shot this person's head. There's no ambiguity when it comes to things like that in shooters oftentimes. It doesn't mean that the genre is easy. It means that there's just more visual harmony and things visually just make more sense to a normal person. But anyway, let me know what you think. How do you feel fighting games compare to other genres when it comes to feeling natural or unnatural on a basic fundamental level? It's GK. Peace out.